So Bongiwe Julayi is one of our doctoral students. She is exploring the electronic governance sector and its implementation in a comparative study of 3 provinces in South Africa. She also has both public and private sector experience over 17 years, and she served at Discovery Health, Moses Kotane Institute, and is currently with the South African Reserve Bank in very different roles. So she's got a lot of hand-on experience in research, innovation management, and project management. She started her academic life with a Bachelor of Science, then moved into management with a postgraduate diploma in management and a Master's of Management. She's also previously completed a Senior Management Development Program. So you come to us well equipped with leadership experience and academic mix, which is the way we love it at Da Vinci. So Bongiwe, the idea of sharing your presentation and your work in progress is to get feedback from the Da Vinci community, to engage us with your research, and to get some feedback from those of us who have ideas, suggestions, or resources for you. So Zangai, perhaps you can just introduce Bongiwe to us a little bit more.
Bongiwe is adding a flavor to the public administration on how to manage innovation there. Initially, we were grappling with the 4IR, trying to bog ourselves down there, but later on we said, no, let's go beyond this, because by the time we finish this study, we will be talking about the 6th or the 7th IR. But at the end of the day, her major focus is on how he can revolutionize the fusion of public sector management and the technology aspect, equipped with the experience that she has across many sectors. We look forward to a very engaging discussions from the Da Vinci community and other academics on this platform. Thank you so much, Dr. Ida.
Thank you, Zangai. Bongiwe, over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen on the call. As explained, I am looking at electronic governance and its implementation, which is a comparative study of 3 provinces in South Africa. Of course, supervised by Dr. K. The world is witnessing a proliferation of ICT deployment in the public sector with the aim of restructuring and replacing traditional forms of governance systems through electronic governance. The main role of ICT for governance is to improve the quality of governance services and products that are already currently being provided by governments, and enhance the participation of the people in choosing those products and services. Like many other African countries, our country is under pressure to improve service delivery and ensure greater operational efficiencies. The country is grappling with structural unemployment, extreme dependence on social grants, high levels of poverty, violence, and a declining state and municipal income. More so, the growing levels of dissatisfaction that has come to fore with civil unrest at an increasing rate, forcing government at local, national, and provincial levels to consider the ways in which they are dealing with these demands. In terms of key definitions, I think I'll just go to governance and e-governance. The study will also just explore the issues of industrial revolution and implementation. But for this presentation, just to give a context on what is governance and what is e-governance. The UNDP defined governance as an exercise of economic, political, and administrative authority to manage the country's affairs at all levels. It comprises of mechanisms and processes and institutions through which citizens and other groups articulate their interest, exercise their legal rights, and meet their obligations. In a broader sense, it talks to the institutional capacity of public organizations to provide public goods that are demanded by citizens. E-governance, on the other hand, is the use of ICT in governance that facilitates an efficient, speedy, and transparent process of disseminating information to the public and performing governance administrative activities. I think the previous Curiositas did touch on the issue of governance and performance within the public service, which what e-governance then seek to do by applying the ICTs. Overall, Ms. Uraka in 2007 highlighted the interaction and interdependencies between government, citizen, industries that is enabled by ICT. That is the graph on the side, and it shows the interaction between government and businesses and economic sectors with the administration and the citizen, which is more or less e-governance is multi-level, multi-sectoral, and also have multiple actors. When looking at where South Africa has been in terms of governance, this is a worldwide governance indicator, which is by the World Bank. It just shows a steady decline in South Africa's rank on governance effectiveness and control, especially on corruption, from 1996. South Africa ranked for governance effectiveness fell from a measure of 79 in 1996 to 65 in 2014, then from 65 slightly increased in 2019. Overall, in 2019, the country moved from 54 to 60 in the ranking for control of corruption at the same period. When looking at what happens post-2019 with COVID-19, Transparency International released a corruption perception index in 2020, which of course measures the perception levels for public sector corruption in 180 countries. South Africa was ranked 69. However, the report did highlight the challenges that South Africa faced in governing COVID-19 expenditure, as audit revealed overpricing, fraud, corruption on funds allocated to COVID-19. Of interest is that mostly provincial governments were very much involved and very much come out as having been involved in COVID-19 corruption, and also some allegations at a national level. The 2022 edition of the UN survey on e-governance has found that many African countries have implemented digital measures with more improvements on online services. However, there are challenges in terms of inclusivity across all countries in Africa. Just to note that South Africa, Mauritius, Seychelles, and Tunisia are leading the pack in terms of the 2022 digital survey. This brings us to the problem that this study seeks to address. The country has been experiencing challenges, as mentioned earlier, especially to deliver services and projects. Electricity sector and other infrastructure in South Africa are considered dysfunctional. I think we're all aware of load shedding and the issues at Eskom. While the progress has been made in reforming the state infrastructure, the pursuit has been inconsistent and has meant that inequality and poverty remain a serious challenge to the country. According to the country, it is evident from these difficulties that in providing functioning infrastructure can be largely traced back to underperforming governance, mismanagement, corruption, and failing service delivery systems. Furthermore, the inability to govern the political interest has led to the growth of public sector corruption and to power struggles within the ruling alliance. And this came very strongly in the state capture report, where it was highlighted that cadre deployment has had a hand in dysfunctionality and lack of government, especially within the SOEs. According to Stats SA, South Africa, both at urban and rural areas, trust national government far more than the provincial and local governments. It is interesting purely because local government is at the fore of service delivery. They are closer contact with citizens. So the trust being put at national just show that there are distrust between citizens and government, especially at provincial and local government. Governance and economical challenges continue to increase and put pressure on provincial governments. While South African government has put in place policies and financial resources for ICT infrastructure, poverty alleviation programs, and skills development, these have not yielded sufficient results for service delivery to the citizen. Traditional forms of governance have failed, and the adoption of ICT-enabled governance has not been fully explored. Prospects, hindrances, and loopholes in the implementation of a governance initiative in the context of provincial governments remains unknown. In trying to close this gap, this research therefore aims to establish barriers that affect the implementation of governance. The study will determine factors that influence the implementation of governance while examining the technological infrastructure that will enable the implementation of e-governance. The study will also look at the strategic framework for provincial governments and offer policy insights, recommendation concerning the successful implementation of e-governance framework for provinces. There are three broad questions that the study will go out to the field in order to close the gaps that have been indicated. The three broad ones are: what barriers that affect the implementation of e-governance, what factors influence the implementation of e-governance, and how does the current technical infrastructure enable the implementation of e-governance? Of course, under each of these broad ones, there will be sub-questions. The researcher in this thesis assumes that there are multiple realities, and therefore the ontology of the study embraces the realism idea, and the researcher embraces the idea that there are multiple realities in the world, and therefore multiple lenses can be used to understand the phenomena of e-governance. The researcher adopts an interpretism epistemology, as the researcher accepts that knowledge will be co-created by the researcher and the participants in the study. There are ways of knowing about the world other than the direct observation, namely our perceptions and interpretations of the world around us. E-governance reality is not stable, and therefore it cannot be held at constant. Just to conclude on the issues of ontology and epistemology, my own assumptions, which I set out on the study, will form basis upon of which my own thinking about and understanding of the world rest. The positions, both ontological and epistemological, underpins the research, are grounded on the belief that no ultimate or absolute reality exists. In trying to really locate the study in a bigger, broader context, given the fact that e-governance does have a bigger inclination towards technology, and it is an ICT-based governance, we had to look at industrial revolution and governance. There has been 5 known industrial revolutions, with the first industrial revolution in 1765, which was more about mechanization. The second industrial revolution in the 1800s, more about electrification. The fact that we don't have power and we are struggling with power in 2021 speaks to a serious issues of concern, given the fact that the technology existed so long ago. The 3 IRs spoke to automation, where everything else started to be online. And in 2011, the 4th industrial revolution took the world by the storm, and the whole thing of digitization, the whole thing of infusing the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds into systems. And post-COVID, of course, we're talking post-digitization, which is the 5th industrial revolution. As these revolutions are developed, so has been the paradigms on public administration. The first industrial revolution occurred spontaneously without government assistance. And then, of course, the first paradigms of public administration, namely the dichotomy between politics and public admin, principles of administration, the era of challenge, and the crisis of identity, they all took place in the second industrial revolution. The 2IR, which was characterized by a rapid increase in purchasing power of money and the new technologies, created challenges and opportunities for public administration. And the role of government was therefore questioned as more emphasis was placed on institutional building, bureaucratization, nationalization, and administration capacity for national and economic development. Then 3IR, which is the third industrial revolution, coincided with a shift from public administration to public management. The new public management emerged to confront the problems on efficiency in the administrative systems. Even the previous paradigms, they really were looking at the issues of inefficiencies in public admin. I mean, the first two really looked at separating the power from politics, but the new public management really looked at introduced the idea of improvement and restructuring. But at its peak, around about in the 1980s, 1990s, there was another shift from public management to governance. And the introduction of governance introduced the idea of open government, transparency to decision-making, improve accountability, and fostering of collaboration and stakeholder participation. And those, they were not there in the first two industrial revolutions, in the first 6 paradigms in public administration. Then enter the 4IR, which has been the most innovative and disruptive technological advancement as compared to the previous revolutions. The 4IR, driven by advanced ICTs, really increased the demand for accountability and transparency for government. And I think social media has played its critical role in really calling government out and establishing different routes to reach out to government and demand accountability and demand transparency. It also enabled the decentralization of power, therefore impacting on governance patterns. So communication, the flow of information, as much as government had a hand in what the citizens are able to get access to, what the 4IR has done is to really decentralize that power and bringing it back to the people so that they're able to communicate freely and the platforms are available. Therefore, introducing the idea of agile and responsive governance by using technology and innovation to enhance decision making. However, post-COVID, the world shifted very much rapidly. The speed and the scope of change really fast-tracked the shift from the 4th to the 5th industrial revolution. So far, there is limited academic literature pertaining to the 5IR. What we do know about the 5IR is the introduction of cobots, which are robots that interact with humans, and that the factory floors will differ significantly. Other than that, we have no literature pertaining to the kind of governments or governance that is required for this industrial revolution. However, there are indications that the smart and agile responsive governance will continue to the 5IR at a more faster rate and at a more agile rate, of course, driven by artificial intelligence. While governments have not yet fully leveraged the 4IR technologies and their advantages for governance, this shift presents a conundrum on its own. So at this point in time, we are definitely in the position of exploring and establishing what kinds of forms of governance will be necessary for the 5th industrial revolution, which is another area that the study hopes it will fill the gap and bring about new knowledge on the space. In terms of the literature that has been reviewed for this study, in terms of governance implementation, a variety of studies have been identified and assessed in terms of benefits of e-governance. The empirical evidence suggests that there has been progress made towards identifying the benefits of e-governance as compared to actually defining the term, because the term e-governance has its own issues in terms of scholars differing significantly. In terms of the implementing driving factors, consolidated analysis on this highlighted that the implementation factors that are prominent are political, economic, technological, socio-cultural, legal, and organizational. And in terms of barriers to implementation of e-governance, they can be categorized as technical, organizational, societal, and economic. Most studies discovered that technical barriers were linked to the lack of ICT infrastructure, disruptions in power supply, and skills. Across all studies, security and privacy featured significantly as barriers to e-governance implementation. South African studies that were identified were conducted between 2005 and 2008. And again, there is not much on the new literature on the space of e-governance. The study has also noted that various empirical studies on drivers and challenges on e-government resulted mostly on a broad categorization of these challenges. And these do not necessarily provide an in-depth understanding of both drivers and barriers to e-governance. Literature studies showed that scholars were more inclined into looking at these from a single context. As a result of this knowledge gap, the study intends to interrogate the drivers and barriers within by looking at three provinces and comparing each other. Furthermore, in reviewing the studies, found that most research on the issue, especially within South African context, is on e-government, not on e-governance. Therefore, this dissertation also aims to interrogate the recent developments and add to the knowledge on e-governance in South Africa. The theoretical framework that the study adopts is an actor network theory. E-governance approach refers to a use of networks, partnerships, and collaboration, both internal and external to government, in building e-governance systems. Therefore fits perfectly to this theory. It was developed in the 1980s, led by Bruno Lafont, Michael Cannon, and John Law. It looks at actors, actor network, and symmetry as key concept, where actor refers to a person, a machine, or microbe, whereas an actor network is perceived through a common inclusion of both human and non-human participants in the network. Within the space of e-governance, the non-human elements could be policies, technology, government services, etc. The theory best defines the theoretical interconnection between human and technology, which are fundamental elements of e-governance. It provides the lens in which to view the role of technology in shaping governance within a holistic appreciation of all actors involved in a governance system. The study will adopt a qualitative research approach as it seeks to gain understanding of the factors that drive the implementation of e-governance, and also to get in the picture on the status of e-governance within the three provinces. The study will utilize a case study design as an appropriate tool to study e-governance and its relationships within the three identified provinces. A non-random sampling technique, which is more purposive sampling, will be adopted, and the individuals selected to yield maximum information about e-governance. And this is a high-level sample summary that the study aims to use in getting to the experts and the key role players within the 3 provinces in getting very much good data and therefore analyze the data to come up with responses to the questions highlighted a bit earlier on this presentation. Secondary data and documents and digital content will also be utilized. The scope focuses on Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal and Western Cape. These have been selected due to their economical status, political climate, and complexities in governance. As highlighted on the literature review, there's very limited prior research on e-governance, and that will limit the study for laying foundation for thorough understanding of e-governance within the provincial context and South African context. This is also limit the study in establishing e-governance trends for provinces in South Africa. In terms of relevance, the study will specifically look at the key challenges such as socioeconomic challenges, lack of service delivery, technology, citizen demands, project failures, and digital divides in identification of the barriers that could be mitigated against. The study will also look at those that are driving the successful implementation and provide a framework for enhancing e-governance in provinces. The contribution to the growing body of knowledge on e-governance is a paramount significance that the study really aims to assist in developing new knowledge for South Africa, especially at provincial level. E-governance is a new phenomenon in the public administration. The concept has been researched and understood much more in the developing world. South Africa is still developing, therefore, the study will contribute in bringing to the fore the understanding within a developing country's perspective. The study will also bring about the knowledge of South African context, as indicated earlier, bridging the gap between the developing and the developed countries. The findings of the study will produce new knowledge for South African government, both at national and provincial level, in understanding the barriers and the drivers of e-governance, and to hopefully that in providing recommendations, the study might just be able to assist in developing new frameworks for e-governance for the 3 provinces. I thank you.
If we have to help you with one thing today, what would that thing be?
If I have to help you with one thing, I think that will be to break down the broader questions. Reason being that the literature that has been reviewed in those broader categories sort of fits a lot of things within one category without expanding much of the study, however, gaining maximum insight. How then do we have to break it in asking these questions, be able to break it down to the point where a very clearer picture on barriers and their reasons and drivers and their their value in driving e-governance. If I could get those, meaning if I could break down the bigger questions to smaller questions in trying to close that gap, that will be a win for me today. More so, again, in terms of how then do I direct, given the complexities within the 3 provinces that has been selected, are the people that I'm talking to relevant? The answer is yes, but is there a need to look at the receivers of these projects?
Thank you. So I'm going to leave it there. I saw some applause and some love for you. So people have appreciated your presentation. Well done. You've covered a lot of ground. Are there any comments or questions from anybody today in response to Bongiwe's question. Prof. Paul?
Thank you very much, Heather. Bongiwe, thank you for your presentation. So there's just, I've got a question with a comment, but before I get there, I've just picked up a contradiction between what you're saying overall and your slides. So you don't have to go to the slides because I read them carefully. So in your where you've got ontology and you've spoken to your ontology, and then much later you've got your theoretical framework where you spoke about A and T as your theory. Your first line there also shows the contradiction. So under your ontology, what you spoke about and what you described and what I'm listening to is you are subjective. You believe in being subjective. You believe in multiple realities. But on the slide, you are saying you are realist. I think it's a misspelling. You meant to say relativist.
Thank you very much. I'll take a look.
If you were a realist, then you wouldn't be able to do a qualitative study. And also, when you look at the first line, towards the end of the first line, where you've got your A and T, the theory, you are saying that this theory supports relational investigations. Yes. So it shows that we are relativist. And I'm glad you're going in that direction, because if you believe in Ubuntu, and you in South Africa, we're not doing this study in the moon or in a foreign planet or in a foreign country where there's no relation. You know, if this was a study in the United States, it's something else. But here, we believe in being relational. So that's why I would say your ontology then is relativism. So that's just an observation. So I want to come back to what's, I won't say confusing me, but it's concerning me in the sense that you've sketched out nicely the industrial revolutions, in a linear fashion, which is okay, just to get an understanding of where we come from over the different revolutions. And you've shown that the challenges that we're experiencing in South Africa right now do not belong in the fourth and the fifth revolutions, industrial revolutions. They come from the second industrial revolution. Okay, so once people got urbanized, once industry kicked in, etc., we have, as government in South Africa, we have not resolved challenges that belong way back there. So why will you give the responsibility for e-governance to government? Is this government's sole responsibility, or is it, where does the business world fit in? Where does society fit in this? Are we placing the emphasis in the correct place? Because if we're talking about something that's so abstract, if I can put it that way, it's something digital, government, politicians, they're not capable of grasping this. Now, I'm not saying they're not intelligent enough, but that's not where their focus is. Why do we place the governance of electronic communication, etc., into government's hands? That's my big challenge, because you did say that in your literature, there was some that spoke about e-government, but your study is about e-governance. And I would say government is something else and governance is something else. So also with business, it's not about provinces. Government politically has divided the country for government's purposes that way, but business does not work with those boundaries. So this is the thing that's concerning me a bit. I'm not saying you will be able to answer it, but maybe we can have a chat offline between you and your supervisor. I don't know how you would respond, but I don't need an answer to it right now. Thank you.
If anybody has any suggestions for Bongiwe, please pop it in the chat. Lita, over to you for this afternoon's wrap-up.
So let's do the visual summary for the green economy in the 21st century. We spoke about from Tong to Venezuela. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. I've been to Tong, brilliant place. Aviation is looking to decrease their carbon footprint. The green economy is critical to the health of our country and the health of our world. So we should take ecological economics really seriously. As a government, we should be doing more to focus on the green economy, and as a private sector, we should encourage green initiatives as well. Are we doing enough for ecotourism or for green tourism? Being willing and being capable are two different things. So that creative tension that we spoke about, the question was highlighted around population explosion. How do we balance that with social needs? And it really comes down to having the political will to make a difference. Make the green option the most attractive option. Focus on the individual to start changing behavior, and start with education in our schools. For the current systems that we have, consider the impact on the maintenance and really focus on how we can improve those current systems. So those were the main insights that I got from the presentation around the green economy in the 21st century. If we move to the electronic governance and its implementation, the doctoral student, Ms. Julayi, spoke about comparing the three provinces. Government is currently embracing the ITC governance, and we have massive problems to solve in this country. Governance is seen as the capacities to supply goods to the citizens through the use of technology in terms of ITC governance. And there's that interface between governance, the citizens and the industry, where the citizens are demanding transparency and accountability. If we think about the impact that COVID-19 has had on the steady decline of governance and effectiveness, specifically around corruption, it's something to be worried about. The three questions that she's looking at, and I'm summarizing here: what are the barriers? How do we implement? And what is the infrastructure? Ontology, is it realism or relativism? But there's many lenses to look at this. She took us through industrial revolutions from 1765 through to the fifth industrial revolution, 2020, and she spoke about how the paradigms on the public administration is developing over time, and that we don't quite know what the fifth industrial revolution is going to bring. The literature is not available yet. She spoke about the barriers, including lack of infrastructure, disrupted power, and the lack of skills. She spoke about the ANT, the actor network theory, as a theoretical framework, and that she's using a qualitative approach in the three provinces, Gauteng, KZN, and the Western Cape, really talking to experts and stakeholders to get their inputs. The relevance and the significance to the field is insights into the lack of service delivery, technology, socioeconomic aspects, the digital divide, the demands from the citizens, and the project failures. And it's really around adding knowledge to the industry, around insights around this particular aspect in developing countries. And that's Dr. Good, over to you. That is our visual summary.
Lita, thank you so much. And as always, you've captured so many elements that we've been talking about. That is our evening tonight, and we are finishing on time. Thank you for being adaptable and curious tonight. I hope that you will take curiosity with you into your holiday season. And because it's November, this is the last Curiosita for the year. So we invite you to come back in the new year in February. And as you know, we'll continue on the last Tuesday of the month to stimulate your thinking, to stimulate your curiosity, and to go forward. Percy, we would love to have you back. So I think sustainable, human-friendly, green, environmentally friendly development is going to be such a necessary part of how we go forward in business and public sectors. So we do need to educate ourselves and explore the concerns some more. Bongiwe, e-governance, I think it's such an important thing to look at and where we are going. So I'm looking forward to seeing how your research emerges and goes further. If anybody has some input for Bongiwe, please feel free to email it to us, either to myself or to her supervisor, Dr. Zangai. We will share it and get it to Bongiwe as soon as possible. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your engagement and the questions in the chat. I've really appreciated the conversations today. So I wish you a good evening and a really blessed holiday season, however you choose to celebrate your December. I hope it includes some rest and replenishment so that you can come back and we can kick off 2023 with some great energy to move the goals we're trying to achieve. Stay curious, and stay engaged.